Busting out the big guns today with the Wolf wrencher here. We're gonna do some work on the Tenere today. We have been waiting months for full Ohlins suspension to come from Fast Bike Industries. It's Ohlins spec suspension tuned by Andriani with Andriani custom front triples, specifically built and tuned for the T7. So what we're gonna start with today is we're gonna take some ride height measurements and we're gonna check ground clearance so we can get some baseline numbers. We're gonna pull the rear shock on this bad boy and we're gonna take some eyelet to eyelet numbers so we can compare the new stuff to the stock stuff. And then if we have time, we're gonna pull the front end, we're gonna pull the front triples, and I have to swap bearings on the triples. I'm probably just gonna get new bearings and new seals, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So here we've got our Camel ADV skid plate with our modified piece of UHMW that we designed. That's got a dual layer replaceable wear pad right here that's been holding up really good. It's got a little bubble in it, but it's not destroyed like the old one was. We're gonna go ahead and check. We're looking at about roughly 9.5 inches. And for you metric humans, that is roughly 241 millimeters of clearance to the skid plate. So now we're gonna write down that number. We're gonna pull the shock, measure eyelet to eyelet, and then put the fancy new shock on, which this is the new Flow TTX shock. And then we'll measure that clearance when we're done with that. All right, so here we have the stock Tenere 700 shock. And this shaft is a hollow shaft with oil running through it. That's 14 millimeters. This is the TTX Flow shock with an X-Trig adjuster. This is a 16 millimeter solid shaft. So this works a little bit differently. You can see how much larger the body diameter is, how much larger the reservoir is. It still has a preload adjustment here. This just has it here, right? And it still has this gas charge fill, nitrogen fill over here, but it's a much bigger diameter shock, much bigger spring. The eyelet size is only 6 millimeters longer on this shock versus this shock. That's pretty much it. We're gonna go ahead and get this bad boy installed. Didn't take long to get this out. I did notice is I must have bottomed this thing pretty hard, because if you look at that bushing right there, mostly on this side, look at that. It's already starting to push out pretty good. And when I broke the linkage guard on the Tenere before, that's what happened to that after just a few rides of going through rocks. And you can see how much better this one held up, a lot better with this dual plate. That is the shit. I also filled these linkages solid with gear lube and grease, and I've gone through a lot of water crossings. Look at that, no water penetration. That is awesome. Take your linkages apart, kids. Fill them with gear lube and grease. You will thank me in the long run. It works. We're gonna put some fresh gear lube in these things here, just because we've got it apart and it's easy. But look at that, clean as a whistle. So with the new shock in, we're about 9 3/4. We're about 9.5 before. So that's a 1/4 inch, roughly 6 millimeters for you metric humans. And the new shock is installed. Looks real pretty. And there it is, completely tucked away and protected, which is nice. It's definitely a lot stiffer feeling when you just kind of bounce it on the ground. And I re-lubricated everything and added some fresh grease. So we're ready to start on the front, which I think at this point we will do tomorrow.